Republican, Democrat, if you're in a left-leaning city and you invest in a left-leaning city, you're going to have more rules and regulations.
Correct.
And it doesn't matter whether you have short-term rentals or long-term rentals or apartment complexes. They are going to say, this is what you're allowed to do and this is what you aren't allowed to do. So guess where I don't invest? What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and we are back with another Whisky Wednesday episode. Dave and I are going to talk about a couple things going on in our world. We always cover some personal items in Odyssey, what we're doing, what we're having fun out there in the world doing, and then also cover a trending topic that's going on and answer some questions. And so if you have questions, make sure you're sending them in, replying on one of our social platforms, DMing us, whatever you need to do. Email us, support of Odyssey. We'll get those questions answered for you on an upcoming Whisky Wednesday episode. So Dave, let's dive in today. What do we have on the agenda today?
Feels like it's been a while since we had this. You know, we were.
Hey, we do it every Wednesday. Don't tell everybody that sometimes we record a couple at a time.
I just feel like, we were in Alaska last week fishing.
Yes, we were. And, so that's why we're doubling up this time.
A couple people said that they haven't seen us take a sip.
Oh, I know. Somebody said that.
Let's have a sip while we're at it. You know what I mean?
Hey, sometimes we start at 8 in the morning, and so we don't sip whiskey. But hey, this one is actually in the afternoon.
So, let's talk about that a little bit. So, you and I have a little tradition. Every year we go to Alaska in September. We go up and fish in Southeast Alaska for the silver salmon.
Yep.
Been a heck of a fun run that we've had together. You've been up there about 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
I've been up there just a few more. But man, that's been a fun trip, huh?
That's a dang fun trip. Yeah, we just got back. It's one of those trips every single year that we just look forward to it, right? Like, I think my first year was back in 2006. Man, it's been a while. Your dad started the trip.
Yeah, back
how many years ago? You've been.
Man, the first year I went was about 1986. I think 1986, the first year that I went. So it's been fun.
Yeah, so we go up to this spot called Yakutat, Alaska, Southeast Alaska. We go up chasing the silvers and flying into rivers, mostly river fishing. Yeah. We don't do any of the ocean fishing. Yeah. So it's one of those trips that we just look forward to every year. I get so stressed out right before I go every single year. You always laugh at me. Teresa always laughs at me. She's like, come on, you got to, it's one of my funnest weeks of the year. But
I know.
It always feels like we're disconnected. You don't have internet. Right. You don't have phone.
Right.
Everything's just off the grid. And, you're forced to really disconnect. And I stress out about it until you're about into day 2 or 3. And you're like, man, this is kind of nice.
It's super fun. I know. It's hard to leave work. It's hard to leave your family. But, man, when you get up, scenery and nature and up there catching fish. And, oh, man, it's just. And the crazy thing, too, is I always think about when we're up there is when we leave to go up, it's summertime. When we return, it's fall here in Utah.
Yeah.
The cool weather set in. Starts to get colder in the evenings. The days aren't quite as warm, but it's It's that transition from summer to fall for us every year.
It's fun, and it's something we look forward to every year, right? We got a great group of guys, pretty much the same group.
Yeah.
That some guys have gone in and out over the years, but the last 5 or 6 years, we pretty much have the same group every single year.
Yeah.
It's been really fun. What's your favorite part about it?
My favorite part, there's different things that we do every day. We float the river one day. We do a fly out one day. We just do something different every day. That we take a jet boat down the river one day. All river fishing. I love the scenery. So my favorite part is being able to do. We're fishing every day, but we're doing a different adventure every single day, and that makes it super fun. So, what about you? What do you like?
It's funny. My first 5 or 6 years, I was just like, I wanted to catch as many fish as possible. It's like I'm counting every fish I catch, and you're just trying to catch. It didn't matter anything else that was going on. Now I can go catch a couple fish, and I like to walk up and down the banks. Like you said, we're in a different spot every single day, and almost always on the rivers. In some areas, like one river we fished this year, we fished it before, but we fly in, and the pilot who flies into this specific river, we were the first group all year long to fish this river. I mean, it's awesome. Crazy. I mean, you're the first people to set foot on the river, and the bears and the eagles and everything else around. And it's really, really pretty fun. I mean, and so now my favorite part is just kind of exploring those new areas. We always catch a fish and fillet it and cook it over the coals. And have it for lunch, and that's always amazing. I mean, you literally catch a fish, and in 20 minutes later,
or you're enjoying it, and that's super fun
yeah,
too.
It's fun.
So,
yeah.
But we don't get on the boats, do we?
No, we don't get on the boats. We don't go in the ocean. I don't.
I don't either.
Yeah, you don't either anymore.
Sean and I, we're pretty tough guys, if you know us. But him tougher than me. But we don't. Boy, that sea will bring us to the knees. We both get sick out there, so we don't do any halibut fishing or get on those boats.
No,
we have a few guys that do, but that's
those guys that go out on the ocean. They're tougher than me.
Exactly.
I'm the guy that's hanging over the edge of the boat puking.
Yeah. So I know a lot of our fans and our followers will see some of the photos and some of the things we did up there this year. So
what is my Instagram?
Odyssey Shawn Moore. Odyssey Shawn Moore.
Odyssey Shawn Moore. Go check out on Instagram. We got some awesome photos on Instagram, guys. And you did. Hey, Dave you were kind of like a cameraman this year.
I was.
We were trying like crazy to be influencers up there, guys. So,
we're so.
If you can't go like and follow our stuff because we did our best to be like influencers.
Until next year, we'll keep preparing and get excited. The other great thing is we bring home a lot of salmon for our freezers. We eat it all year long, and it's so fresh and so nice. That's a fun part of it too.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So good. This is kind of a fun one. You and I. This was last week. We had heard and saw an Airbnb article in a magazine, or I think maybe it was online, and it talked about Airbnbs and VRBOs in New York City and how they were changing some regulations and that it was really going to affect, the Airbnbs in New York City itself. And I thought it was super interesting, the article, and I want to I'll let you give a second just to kind of give the premise of what was discussed, but I also want to call out a few comments in here, and I think this is super important for our followers to understand and listen to.
Yeah, and this is an article that was what was the title of the article?
It said the end of Airbnb in New York City. So the end of Airbnb in New York City,
and we've seen this in a lot of major metropolitan areas, right? And so the basis of the article is Airbnb's over. You can't do it anymore, and they're going to be shut down in these New York cities, just, one of many cities that, San Francisco's on the line, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, all these big cities are mentioned to say they're next. You're not going to be able to do Airbnbs. And this specific article was from a major, it's not our style to call people out by name. And so, but it's a major
publication.
The publication, but this was an email from a major investor. Sells courses on investing in apartments. Right. And basically saying that, hey, I've always said Airbnbs are bad. Right. And it's, that's not what, you shouldn't invest in single family homes. You should do apartments. We'll get into that later. At the end of the day, we've been saying this for a long time. Right. You guys, short-term rentals are mainstream assets at this stage. You're going to have areas that like them and areas that don't like them. A lot of major metropolitan areas, they're worried about affordable housing, as they should be, right? I don't think personally, and we won't get into this today, I don't think personally that short-term rentals hurt the lack of affordable housing. Affordable housing is if you buy something as a long-term rental, you're probably going to long-term rent it, but we won't get into that topic. But their opinion is that short-term rentals being active in the city is going to take away from the supply and the inventory of affordable homes that other people can rent. That's a problem across the board especially in major metropolitan areas. And so we've had to deal with strict regulations in major metropolitan areas for a long time. That has nothing to do with this game going away. Short-term rentals are not going away. They're mainstream. People are going to prefer them. There's going to be areas that hotels work better. There's going to be areas that short-term rentals work better. And you have to understand that. Just like any other asset, you can't go you can't go put a 7-Eleven right next to a school because it's not going to be zoned correctly, right? Short-term rentals have their own zoning and rules and regulations now. And a lot of major metropolitan areas are going to not be in favor of short-term rentals. New York City came out and banned short-term rentals without, following certain rules and regulations and things like that. That's going to be normal. Right. So to say that it's over, I think is I would say it's too, clickbait, right?
So here's a couple points. One, I don't remember ever, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember ever one of our Vodacy members buying a short-term rental in New York City, in Chicago, or LA. I don't know.
They don't work.
They don't work.
Well, and I shouldn't say they don't work. That's categorically false as well.
Yeah, they do
can work, but they're not going to be favorable permits and licensing that you're going to be able to go get to be able to operate.
Right.
And so it's probably not where you're going to be investing anyways.
Yeah. The other interesting thing was, This was in the article, and I'll read a word for word, but it said Airbnb wasn't worried about this recent news because only 1% of their 2022 revenue came from the Big Apple rentals.
Right.
So really, there aren't a lot of short-term rentals in those areas, and they're not worried about it because when people are buying an Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental vacation home, they're buying them in other locations.
Right.
They're a little bit more friendly and so forth. So I thought that was super interesting. Now, so a couple of things. So he said, and I'm just going to read these, but it said, all short-term rental owners looking to make some extra cash now have to find a better alternative. One that won't get taken out from under them. So he's saying in the article, find another option because they're going to pull them from under you.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you say to that?
I say buy in areas like I've always said.
Right.
One of the very first steps in acquisition, number one step, is to figure out if you can get licensed and permits for short-term rentals. And if you have to operate in the gray area, if you don't have licensing and zoning and permitting in place in the area you're investing, the rug could get pulled out from under you. The rug's not getting pulled out from under you. You didn't do your underwriting correctly.
Right, exactly.
You have to take responsibility and say, I went and bought in an area that I wasn't allowed to do a short-term rental. And allowed means that you actually have a license and a permit and the zoning to do so.
Right. So he goes on to say, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, single family housing will not get you to financial freedom. Neither will short-term rentals. This is just more proof. I think that's totally wrong. Absolutely against everything that we talk about.
Yeah.
Because we're investing in markets that are profitable, that are zoned correctly. We're not buying properties in New York City and Chicago and LA because of these reasons.
Right.
And I get it. They may be, cracking down on this. That's exactly why we don't, promote or buy them.
And to say, and I know who said this, and it's disappointing because I believe he's a good trainer, right? I believe he understands what he's doing in apartments and investing in apartments. But you guys have heard me say all the time, I love short-term rentals. It's all I invest in. But have you ever heard me say that apartments are bad, that long-term rentals are bad, commercial properties are bad, all these different asset classes within real estate? No. There are pros and cons in every single asset with real estate, within real estate. It's by far and away, real estate is the number one way to build wealth in America, period. It's not even an argument. I mean, real estate has created more wealth than all the other assets or all the other investments combined. Real estate is a good investment. Apartments are good. Commercial properties are good. Long-term rentals, single-family rentals, short-term rentals. To say that single-family rentals and short-term rentals are not good investments is crazy. One, they're the most accessible investment for the average everyday American. That's crazy to say that you can't build lifestyle and financial freedom. I mean, we know how many people that do it. We have 2,500 people that we've helped over the last 3 years. There's so many people that are building lifestyle and financial freedom in that. He says that short-term rental game can change on you overnight, and you shouldn't invest in short-term rentals because of this. Well, if I own a apartment complex, and because I think he went on to say this doesn't happen with apartments, and that's why I stick with him. I own an apartment complex in New York, Seattle, LA, all these other San Francisco, these other markets that he's mentioning, that's why I only own apartment complexes. You still have rules and regulations with apartment complexes. Are they ever going to say you can't long-term rent something in any city across the nation? Probably never. Never going to happen. Right? But guess what they do in these exact same cities that are restricting short-term rentals? They have this thing called rent control. Doesn't matter what you pay for your property. Doesn't matter how much improvement you do to your property. They tell you can't charge more than X. They have things like moratorium evictions or moratoriums on evictions where you can't evict somebody. You don't get a moratorium on paying your mortgage payment when you own that apartment, but the city can come in and say you can't evict somebody. You still have challenges. It doesn't really matter, especially in these types of cities that are highly regulated. I don't give a shit what you are, Republican, Democrat. If you're in a left-leaning city and you invest in a left-leaning city, you're going to have more rules and regulations.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether you have short-term rentals or long-term rentals or apartment complexes. They are going to say, this is what you're allowed to do and this is what you aren't allowed to do. So guess where I don't invest? In those types of cities.
Right.
If you want to invest in those types of cities, that's your prerogative. And
your
everybody can do their own due diligence and their own underwriting, but they go out and say, okay, because New York banned short-term rentals, the short-term rental game is over is absolutely, I mean, it's crazy to
Making
think
a blanket statement is wrong. I think that's totally wrong.
I mean,
do your data or do your research and understand the data and invest in markets that are short-term rental friendly.
Because there are plenty of them.
I mean, the part that was so interesting is that only 1% of Airbnb's revenue even came from New York City. So
because it's a small blip
reference
in the overall market.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, I just thought that was good. I think it's important. I think sometimes they catch you on a title and people don't dive in or don't understand, and so they kind of believe what they read sometimes. So, I think it's good to get all perspectives, and it was nice to get our perspective on that as well because we love what we do, and we're moving forward right now. You and I are in acquisition mode. We're looking at properties right here.
It's phenomenal opportunities right now, even at like 8.5%, 9% interest rates that we're paying right now. I mean,
the numbers work. The numbers work.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. But you don't just go blindly buy in any area. The number one step in underwriting is making sure you can get, and you're investing in an area that is short-term rental friendly, that you can get the licensing, the permits, and the zoning to operate as a short-term rental. Because now that it's a mainstream asset class, in today's age, we have to look at that stuff. 5 or 6 years ago, we had to operate in the gray because there wasn't a lot of municipalities that addressed the issue. It wasn't really recognized as a mainstream asset back then. Since we've had this absolute acceleration of maturity since COVID, most municipalities are addressing the issue. And so it's our responsibility as investors, just like any other asset class, we have to make sure that we can operate.
Good. Well, good. Well, let's keep moving forward. I love talking about that stuff. It's a good topic. It's, I think, what people are kind of hearing and what's going on in the market. But let's get to a couple questions. So we got Gary. Gary reached out and said, I am considering a DSCR loan. What are the pros and cons? So I think probably you should, let's talk a little bit about what is a DSCR loan and what are the goods and bads of it? Because there absolutely is goods and some cons to, a DSCR loan.
Yeah. So when it comes to acquiring property, you have a lot of different finance options. DSCR loans, what that stands for is debt service coverage ratio loan.
Right.
What it is the bank is going to look at the asset itself and they're going to underwrite the income that the asset generates to decide if it can service the debt.
Yeah.
And they want a certain ratio. Most of the time they want to see that asset is generating revenue of 1.2 to 1.3 times the actual debt service, right? And so that's what a DSCR loan is. And so the reason they're attractive to investors is you don't have to qualify with your own personal income to get the loan.
So that's one of the pros.
That's one of the absolute pros. Yeah. The asset's going to qualify. Yeah. And so if you have a really good property that you're borrowing against and it's going to generate some good income, and the nice thing about our short-term rental world is these DSCR loans, they'll use projected income, not actual income. So you can look at a property that's never been a short-term rental and they will underwrite it based on its projected income.
On a DSCR loan, do they pull your credit?
Yes.
Do they look at that stuff? How does that all work? Is that similar to a regular conventional loan?
As far as credit, it is. They want to see that you have a good credit score.
Okay.
You're going to have to still have a good credit score. They're all different. Most of the time, they're going to want to see a 700 or above credit score.
Okay.
Now,
do they pull your W-2?
No, they do not look at anything as far as income verification. Okay. All they're doing is pulling your credit.
Gotcha.
And they want to make sure they're actually going to lend the money to an LLC. They're going to require you most of the time to set up an LLC. Not all DSCR loans are created equal.
So do your research, check them out,
absolutely.
See which one works best for you.
The pros are, exactly, as long as you have a decent credit score and the property is going to underwrite, okay, you're going to get the loan. You're going to have to put more down though. They're going to be 20 to 25% down loans. Typically, there are products that are 15% down. And so you can even get them all the way down to 15%. And there's more and more lenders coming into this space, even recently, because what happened is through that real wild ride that everything was going up, lots of lenders were in. When rates really skyrocketed, a lot of lenders started pulling back. And on the conventional loan, traditional loan side, I don't know if anybody that's listening has gotten and tried to get a loan right now. The criteria, the qualifications personally has skyrocketed. Yeah. Well, DSCR kind of pulled back a little bit And then they started to realize, oh, this is a really good market still for us. There's a lot of really good properties. And so we're starting to see lower down payments and more competitive interest rates, because usually you're going to pay a point to a point and a half higher than what you would on a full doc loan, which is, well, full doc loan is basically you giving your W-2s, your tax, your last 2 years of income, bank statements, everything. That's like, that's what we typically think about when we go get a mortgage. With the DSCR loan, you don't provide any of that, but you pay for it by putting a little bit more down.
So the cons are a little bit more money down
and higher interest rate. And then the third con that a lot of people don't think about is that they usually have a prepayment penalty, anywhere from 3 to 5 year prepayment penalty. Okay. So because what you don't want to do is go get one of these loans and then think, well, I'll just refinance it in 6 months.
Gotcha.
You're going to have a pretty big bill to refinance. And usually it graduates down, but usually if it's a 3 year prepayment, it'll be a 3% prepayment. Next year it'll be 2%, 1% till it's gone. 5 year will be the same thing. 5%, 4%, 3%, and it steps down by a point every year. Those things, down payment rates, prepayment, are pretty similar across the board. But I always tell people when they're getting and looking at DSCR loans, and Gary, this is really applicable to you as well, you really want to shop them around, because a lot of times they're portfolio products. And portfolio products means they're not going and selling that loan on the open market to a pool of investors, and they've got, like, conventional loans. When you get a mortgage, you usually get your mortgage, and then all of a sudden 3 months later you're paying your payment to somebody else. Somebody's taking that and servicing that loan or buying that note, right? On the DSCR notes, a lot of times are held by the individual banks, and because of that, they can have different criteria across the board. You might talk to 5 or 6 different DSCR lenders, and they're all a little bit different. And so you need to make sure that you ask those questions and have those conversations.
Perfect. That's good. Yeah, I think that's one of those things that's, the term is thrown around a lot. Not a people understand exactly what that is, but it is an option that people ought to consider and dive into to see if it's something that they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to a lot of commercial type loans where the bank's not really looking. When somebody goes and buys a commercial property, they're not typically looking at saying, hey, Dave, can you afford this $10 million commercial property? They're going to say, okay, Dave, you're buying this. What's your experience? And then I need to really look and see what kind of income that property is going to generate. Good. That's available to us now in the short-term rental world on single-family homes. And that's really, really exciting to have. Okay,
last question. This is from Carly. Is the short-term rental market oversaturated? Pretty broad question, but I think we get that question a lot during our webinars and some of the other things that come up. So Carly had asked, is it oversaturated?
Yeah. So Carly, the oversaturated is a hard question to ask. Is it oversaturated, undersaturated? Is it just regular now? Supply and demand is always typically going to even out, right? We feel like it's oversaturated because the last 2 or 3 years, there was this big demand, gap. Leading up to COVID, supply and demand were pretty even. COVID hits, demand skyrocketed, and it's taken supply a little while to kind of catch up. And so, in my opinion, the market was way undersaturated. There was nowhere near enough homes to help and service all that demand, right? And so now, Carly, what we have is supply and demand have caught up, and so everybody feels like it's oversaturated. The fact of the matter is, in most of the markets we're looking at, the demand continues to go up, even though supply has caught up. There is still a lot of demand out there, a lot of money being spent in these markets. And so and I can tell you it is, because I bought my first property back in 2006, and I was putting it on KSL, local classifieds, and Craigslist, right? And it's a lot harder to create demand in an undersaturated market than it is to go into a saturated market with a ton of demand and then be able to stand out and get your unfair share of business. So don't worry so much about oversaturation. Worry about what it takes to go create this unique experience and be able to get your unfair share of business.
Top of the market.
Absolutely. The top of the market, there's a lot of money to be made in the top of the market because there's a lot of money being spent in those markets.
Good. Well, I think that's all we got for today, buddy. I appreciate talking to you. My best buddy. Hey, we get a chance to just kind of go back and forth.
I like it.
different topics and
it's
ideas,
good.
and hopefully
I can drink whiskey, you can drink Coke Zero, and we have fun.
Yeah, so good being with you today.
All right, guys, well, we'll wrap this episode up. We love your questions. Make sure you send them in, and you guys know at the end of every episode, I ask you two things. One, if you like this, if you got any value out of it, you think somebody else might, share it, like it. If you have more than 30 seconds, leave us a review on the platform that you are listening to it on. We really do appreciate it. And then the final and most important thing is to go pick one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.